If you have a question as we get going, feel free to just type that into the chat, and then we will address those as we go. But I want to welcome you all to our first virtual Hot Topics. Maybe it might be our first and last virtual. Maybe we might get to have some in-person meetings here in June, so maybe our first and last virtual Hot Topics. But we have been trying to do this topic of home inspections for 2 months now. So we're finally getting it done. So I appreciate you all joining us and getting on the Zoom with us to talk about home inspections. There's a lot going on. And I want to also thank and acknowledge Hannah Reno with Keller Williams. She was so helpful in getting you our panelists scheduled today, and she was back and forth, I know, with many of you over the last couple of months. So I don't think she's on, I don't see her on here, but thank you to Hannah Reno for your help in getting this going. And so today we just really want to have a conversation with three of our home inspectors who are members of the bar. I want to introduce Larry Daniels with ASAP Property Inspections. Larry, give us a wave. There's Larry. All right, Larry. Rocky LaMantia. Did I say it right, Rocky?
Pretty close. We'll give you a pass on.
Okay, LaMantia.
Perfect.
All right, Rocky's with Bedrock Inspection Services. And then Brant Humphrey is with Win Home Inspection. Brant, give us a little wave. So, yeah, or a big wave. So these will be our three panelists today. We've got some questions we had gotten ahead of time that we'll be asking of our panelists. But again, if you have questions as you're listening and watching, feel free to pop those into the group chat, and then we will get to those as we move forward. So I'm going to turn it over to our panelists and give them an opportunity just to introduce themselves, talk a little bit about their company, you know, how long they've been doing this, and just give a quick little overview of themselves. So Larry, we will start with you. I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Well, my name is Larry Daniels of ASAP Property Inspections. Got started full-time back in 2004. One of those weird things back then, you actually went to a school to become a home inspector. So I went to Jones College in Denver, Colorado to learn how to do the home inspections, and then went back 2 years later to complete the commercial courses. I think I've done almost 6,000 full fee paid inspections. As inspectors, we do a lot of other weird things like, you know, insurance inspections and occupancy inspections and things like that. But full fee paid inspections, that's where the money is. I do residential and commercial. And I really kind of enjoy doing the commercial because it doesn't seem like it's so, people get so emotional. About 3 years ago, well, about 4 or 5 years ago, actually, we tried to get that legislative home inspection licensing approved. And as an association, the Montana Association of Real Estate Inspectors, we could never get that passed. Everybody liked our bill, and it was great. Democrats, Republicans, we could just never get it out of committee. But thankfully, the Realtors Association, you guys came along. And you guys had a lot of power in the legislature, and you guys got that bill passed. And the bill that you guys passed and the bill that we wanted passed was just almost identical. I mean, it was almost word for word, except for a few little changes, and those few little changes were for the better. So I think it's all of us inspectors, thank you for that. I think last count I looked, we had about 25 inspectors a year ago. And now I think we're down to, what do you think, Rocky, Brant, 15 or so?
Yeah, it's last time I checked, it's right around there.
Yeah. So I think we just lost the inspectors that really were kind of doing it part-time and really weren't into it. So it's a good thing. It's made my business a little more active. You know, now it's like Instead of being booked out 3 or 4 days, 5 days at a time, we're booked out 7, 8 days at a time. So it's made it good for us, but I think all in all, it's made it a lot better for the consumer. And that's all I got to say.
Okay, perfect. Rocky, we'll turn it over to you.
All right. Well, my name's Rocky Lamantia, and I own Bedrock Inspection Services, and I am brand new to inspecting, but I've been, let's see, I opened in end of November last year is when I opened. But I've been in construction my entire life. I'm a journeyman carpenter. Also, let's see, I was a superintendent the previous 5 years in California, moved to Montana, and was really getting tired of the nomadic lifestyle of construction, and instantly found myself living in Billings and working in Wyoming, and was in the process of buying a house. And my wife sat in on the home inspection, and I get home from work and she goes, "Boy, that might be the perfect job for you because you just overanalyze everything." And so I thought, nah, I want to stay a carpenter and stay in construction. And the more I looked into it, and I thought, wow, it's a really cool profession because you get a chance to use your previous skills and help people out and whatnot. And so I think I think it's really fun. It's challenging starting a new business, but luckily things are starting to pick up. So that's great. So all in all, it's been a pretty positive experience, and it's just growing from here. So yeah, that's, I guess that's about it.
All right, perfect.
Short.
Thank you, Rocky. All right, Brent.
Brant Humphrey with Win Home Inspection, and well, this weekend marks 2 years I've been doing it here in Billings. So, and my path was through construction for 15 years with a side route of strength and conditioning and coaching. I've been always kind of been doing that, a little bit of a hobby. I still do strength and conditioning stuff with MSUB basketball, men's and women's basketball teams. That's 6 in the morning, so it doesn't affect what I do throughout the day. But I'm with Larry on the legislation. I thought that was long overdue. It's awesome that that's part of what we do. I think it brings the industry as a whole. It raises the level of the industry and what we're doing, and protects the consumer as well. But again, 15 years construction, and then moved to Billings and took over Win Home Inspection from Todd Sherman, and actually leaned on Larry a little bit when I first started. Someone who's been around, been doing it, and meeting him at coffee shops and picking his brain. And I sure appreciate that, learning from someone who's been doing it for a long time. So I guess that's all I really got. Let's go ahead.
Okay, perfect. And again, if you have any questions for that you've thinking about as we go along, please put those into the chat. I did have a request for each of the inspectors to provide your contact information when we're done. So at the end of our discussion, if we could have your website and all of that good stuff, that way everybody can have that, and we can also share that to all of the participants as well, or people that registered. And I will have this recording up into our e-newsletter that will be going out today, and so we can make sure to include it into that as well. So, but we'll do that at the end, making sure everybody gets your contact information. But one of our first questions that we had, of course, COVID-19 is in our lives right now, consuming all of us. So kind of what precautions are you all taking or doing as we live in this new COVID-19 world, and things don't seem to be changing with that anytime soon. So what kind of precautions have you been implementing throughout all of this, the last 2 months, and then maybe moving forward? don't know who wants to take that. Brant, do you want to start with that?
Sure. And so really, safety-wise, home inspectors are trained to be in the home safely with disturbing as little as possible. But, you know, when this first started, it was gloves, mask, sanitizers, wipes. We were, you know, and I'm still wiping down switches and knobs and handles on the way out of a room. The gloves, those run short real quick. If you've tried to buy some of those that are not, that are exam quality, that don't just tear and fall off, you know that those are hard to find right now. And really, so if to do it right with gloves, you need to be changing them anytime you leave the house. You should probably take them off, and then you come back in, you put a new pair on, or you're washing them just like you would hands. So gloves have gone on the wayside for me, but it's a matter of I don't have hand sanitizer. I have a spray bottle full of rubbing alcohol that a lot of times a day, too many to count. I'm just washing my hands, sanitizing the hands, you know, anytime in and out, changing environments, kind of similar like hospital setting of anytime you walk in a room, sanitize, you walk out, sanitize. Anytime I'm in or out of the house, it's a rewash the hands, that type of stuff. And then just kind of sanitizing my way out of the home. I have not seen a bit, like I did change everything on offering virtual walkthroughs, Skype or FaceTime walkthroughs. And I really have not seen very many people that are doing that, besides the ones kind of the uptick of buyers that I've seen lately. There's been an uptick of buyers that have never seen the house besides virtually. And then my walkthrough is virtual and they're buying the house. And those have stepped up a notch, but really the people that are in town that are buying, they really like to show up and be part of that. And I've limited, you know, used to allow them to be there the whole inspection if they wanted. I've tried to really limit that, just the amount of time someone else is in the house. When a walkthrough, I kind of can control, you know, what they're touching, what they're in contact with. And so it's changed a little bit with just a little more. It's basically more vigilance of paying attention to spreading COVID or not.
Yeah, not spreading. That's what we want, not spreading. Rocky, how about you? Anything to add there?
I'm pretty much doing the same thing. Being diligent with the gloves and the mask, although it's still weird knocking on somebody's door wearing a mask and gloves and they've never seen you before. But other than that, yeah, just making sure that I'm not cross-contaminating things. A lot of hand sanitizer, stuff like that. I mean, that's pretty much the gist of it. Making sure I'm not having a clean pair of inside, outside pair of shoes. I think pretty much everybody does that or has booties, so you're not tracking things in, stuff like that. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, I still have contact with all kinds of people. I'm not really doing the virtual thing or anything like that. But yeah, it's just making sure and being cognizant of what you're doing and just being aware of everything, and just when in doubt, just sanitize your hands, keep your mask on, stuff like that. So that's about it.
Larry.
On that point, that's funny, Rocky, that as a home inspector now, we go with a face mask on and we're searching around, digging through people's houses with all masked up. Yeah. No, a few months ago, that probably wouldn't have been okay.
Yeah, it is kind of weird with a mask and a flashlight and gloves. So, yeah, pretty much what these guys have said. Lots of sanitizer, washing the hands, keeping the distance, no handshakes anymore. If anything, it's an elbow bump. Mm-hmm. And, you know, just trying not to spread it. The gloves is a real issue because you do go through a lot of gloves. And so that's kind of been an issue. As far as a mask goes, I usually don't wear a mask, but if my buyers show up and I see them walking up the porch with a mask on, I throw mine on. Those people scare me. So yeah, pretty much what these guys have said. It's a different world out there, and trying not to spread the COVID is what it's all about. A lot more Skype walkthroughs, and like Brand said, it's a lot of people are buying homes and they've never seen the home, and as home inspectors, you know, we really gotta show them the house when we're doing that Skype. So doing a really good Skype, showing the house and what we're talking about and where we're talking about it, and getting it so that they feel comfortable is a big part of it. And I kind of think that we'll probably see a lot more of that. I mean, more and more video and Skype and those kinds of walkthroughs. I hope not, because I really enjoy getting to meet the buyer and talking this thing through with them. And but it's changed our business quite a bit. Yeah. And I can't wait till things get back to normal.
Whatever that may be, right? We don't know what that's going to be, but at least things are starting to slowly open up in Montana, and I think we're fortunate to be where we are in regards to other states. So question we had, what do you all suggest as kind of best practices for realtors? Like, what are things that realtors should or shouldn't be doing through the home inspection process? And so I'm sure there's many best practices, but things you suggest, things you don't suggest. We had a specific one referencing the do you allow the buyer to come during the home inspection? So starting there, best practices for realtors.
You know, it's always nice when the listing agent will let the realtor, let the seller know that we need to have access to the crawl spaces, attic accesses. If the attic accesses in the garage, move the car out. That's always nice when we're not having to come back to do that inspection because something was blocking our way. As far as buyers showing up to do the inspection, you know, I look back to when, 20 years ago when I had my home inspection, I asked the inspector if I could attend the inspection. And he was like, well, it's a little weird, but sure. But I got a lot out of that, and I enjoyed it. And I don't think I bothered the inspector, but it was kind of fun just following him around and getting a little more knowledge about my house. So it's kind of I understand why a lot of inspectors don't want that to happen, don't want the buyer to show up. But it doesn't bother me at all. In fact, a lot of times it seems like it's the builders, the contractors, the electricians and plumbers and those guys that want to show up and do the inspection with you. And man, those guys are always a wealth of information. So I go either way on it. It doesn't really bother me. But sometimes it does slow you down a little bit because you get yakking back and forth, and it can be a little bit of a distraction. Sometimes it gets you off course because normally when we go in and do the inspection, we start with the exterior, do the roof, get down, you know, and we have a set pathway that we go through the home, and sometimes it can mess with that a little bit. But I really don't have a problem with that. I know a lot of there used, you know, I guess about 8-10 years ago, that some of the realtors were taught that you shouldn't attend the inspection because that time is just for the realtor or for the home buyer and the inspector, and you shouldn't. I don't think anybody's teaching that anymore, not that I know of, but I appreciate it when the selling realtor can show up to do the inspection. That's all I got.
I agree with Larry. Like, we do have a set pattern usually, and it's very methodical. And buyers being there can throw that off a little bit. And I think, like when I first started, it threw me way off, and now it's not an issue. Like, it's one of those biggest issue I have when they're there for the inspection is they're standing in the doorway that I need to go through, my picture type, like they're just little things nuances there. A lot of times they start to follow you around and then realize how much we move around, and they get tired of following you around, and you just holler at them when you find something and say, hey, come over, look at this type of thing. It is a great way to learn more about the house. They're there for the whole thing. And like timing, it does take a little longer because you're going to end up chatting a little bit. But if you were to do the walkthrough when you're completed with the inspection, it all kind of ends up being about the same because you take away that final walkthrough with them. As far as buyers agents being part of being there for the walkthrough with their clients, I think it's a good thing. Like, they've built a relationship. We've met this person 5 minutes ago and have about 30 minutes of building a relationship with them. Agents, you guys know, you've spent sometimes years or months with buyers going through houses, and you get to know them very well, and kind of a buffer with that a little bit. And I absolutely agree with Larry on the seller side. Coach them up, clean the closet out that's stuffed from floor to ceiling and the attic access is above it, and clean that out so we can get to it and not have to come back or slow things down. Those little things are, they're just hiccups later on in the process. So otherwise, I think everybody does a pretty good job for the most part.
Rocky.
Well, as far as walkthroughs with the clients, I don't think it slows me down too much. Like you said, because you eliminate the walkthrough at the end. Yeah, we can get chatty, but other than that, I mean, that's pretty much it. I think it's around the same. Let's see. As far as best practices for the realtors, yeah, it's accesses. It's making sure, like, there's not a pile of laundry in a closet directly below an attic access or something like that. And that's kind of the stuff that I've run into. Also, maybe a little bit more communication if there's a radon test going on. Even just having the seller's agent contact number, which you can get, it's not a big deal, but just letting folks know that, you're dropping it at this time, you're picking it up at this time if it doesn't coincide with the actual day of the inspection, stuff like that. So, but generally, nothing slows it down too much, and it's fun to interact with people. And as you go through and discover things, you can show them right then and there what's going on. And yeah, I think that's a good thing if they're there.
Okay. Krista just asked a question. What happens when a client is there for the whole inspection and then accident happens?
Liability insurance on our end should cover that. The other question is, what are they doing? I'm not going to allow them to put themselves in a situation that is going to be an accident. Like, you're not touching my ladder. You're not climbing on my ladder. When I open the electric panel, I tell you beforehand, even if you're an electrician following me around, stay back there. Don't be reaching over here. It's electricity. But good question, really. I would, the liability insurance coverage has got to be there somewhere, probably on our end, as home inspectors would be the ones taking the brunt of that. But I really do wonder, I think when they've been there with me, the control of the situation that I have, I don't see what they would do to cause harm to themselves.
Yeah, and one of the issues that kind of comes up occasionally is when the buyers show up to do the walkthrough and they got a posse of little kids running around the house. You can't keep track of them. You don't know where they're at. They're in the backyard playing. That can get a little concerning because I've had issues there before, but thankfully it was nothing huge. But yeah, little kids is an issue.
So can I say something real quick? So we sent out to the home inspectors the fact that you have the liability because you let people in the house with your key. And you have every right to say, I'm not going to allow these kids in the house, or I'm not going to allow you to come in and measure for carpeting, or, you know, you guys have the liability being the key holder, and you certainly have the right to say, and I think you should say, if, you know, if the seller doesn't know you're coming in here, then I don't have to allow you in the house. So if they want to measure for carpet or measure for blinds or anything like that, they can figure it out with the listing agent, and it's not you guys' responsibility to let them in. And I hope you guys all recognize that it's liability on you because of holding the key. Just to say.
Yep, it's in our ballpark when we're the ones there. So yeah, that's right, Mary.
Rocky, did you have anything to add on to that question or thoughts there?
Not too much to add, but I'm with Brant. Nobody's gonna get up on the roof or touch the ladder, or definitely steer clear of the electrical panel when you're getting ready to open it up. And no confined spaces of any kind. So even maybe underneath the stairs, if it gets a little tight, if there's an access under there. I've actually found a sprinkler control box way in the back underneath a set of stairs. So I had to kind of show the client where it was with the flashlight or whatnot. But yeah, anywhere that somebody could get into any kind of trouble. And I try to consider all scenarios, but you know, who knows what could happen. So, but yeah, I think it would be pretty tough for somebody to get injured doing a walkthrough on a home inspection or just a part of the whole home inspection. It would, you know, I think if you saw some sort of dangerous activity, you could probably put a stop to it pretty quick. So that's about it.
All right. Another question. What are the most common issues that come up as adverse in home inspections?
As what?
Adverse. What are the most common issues that come up as adverse in the home inspection?
Like,
Hail
what are the
damage.
most common things that you guys see that are wrong with the house as like an adverse material fact?
You know, I think with all these hail, all this hail that's going on, it's not uncommon to, you know, pull up to a house and it's got hail damage all over. So hail on the roof is always an issue, and it seems like a lot of people are getting the hail damage fixed on the roof, but they're not replacing the gutters. So that's kind of a questionable thing, you know, like gutters are, you know, the gutter, dents to a gutter is cosmetic damage. Do we really go there? Because we don't typically report on cosmetic issues. But, you know, more and more you're scratching your head going, geez, there's a hail claim paid here, and they probably got money for the gutters. So I don't put it in the report, but I'll mention it. Okay, then I'll mention that I don't get involved in cosmetic, but doesn't mean you can't. You know, with the electrical, old houses with ungrounded outlets, you know, we recommend you know, if it's probably going to be cost prohibitive to ground everything, but GFIs are pretty inexpensive and they're just as safe, if not safer than a ground. So install those where you need to. We still run across Federal Pacific electric panels, a lot of them. You know, just about anything that's built in buildings between 1940 and early 1960s, half of them have a Federal Pacific panel in them, and, or else they've been updated. So electrical, that's what we see a lot of. We see a lot of outlets that aren't grounded, you know, with a loose ground or reverse polarity. Those, we see a lot of that. And crawl spaces, especially the older homes, we see a lot of crawl spaces with no vapor barrier. Some of them don't even have crawl space venting. And so that's something we see quite a bit of.
Flashing issues, a lot of, you know, like kick out flashing on a roof, missing. It's one of those, it's kind of an eyesore when it's there. It does a lot of work, and you rarely see it there. Flashing on decks, that type of stuff. Those are little things that that you're going to see on most of them. Like, and it's whether or not is it creating damage, there's, but that's pretty common. The Federal Pacific panels here it's pretty, like, I think it's more prevalent here than it is in a lot of different regions, really.
Yep. Yeah, whoever sold Federal Pacific panels in this town did a good job. There's millions of them. Yeah. Another thing that I'm seeing quite often, especially on the west end, is high water pressures. Seems like, man, you get on the west side of 32nd Street on the west end, and man, there's about from 32nd out to about Shiloh. Man, it seems like almost everything out there has high water pressure. And by high water pressure, I'm saying something more than 80 psi. It's really common out there, and I'm not sure, but I heard that when the city annexed those subdivisions out there, Ironwood and those, that they pumped up the pressure, and that's the reason a lot of those homes have high water pressure. You see a lot of safety issues. As home inspectors, we get pretty excited about safety issues, and the reason is we don't want anybody to get hurt at a home that we inspected. And geez, a trip to the emergency room is more expensive than a new roof. So we get kind of excited about safety issues, even if it's just a little 50-cent electric outlet cover. We just don't want Junior coming along sticking a knife in there, and so we call out a lot of safety issues.
Yep. Ventilation, bathroom ventilation in an attic, regardless of age of the home, it's probably 50%. Half of them are going to have it vent directly into the attic.
Yep. And attic venting is another big one.
Yep. And ventilation in the attic, yeah.
House was built in the 60s or 50s with no insulation. Somebody came along, after that, and decided to blow in their own insulation and covers up all the soffit vents. And so now you haven't got any soffit vents, so you basically don't have any ventilation. Amazingly enough, I've seen a lot of houses where they've replaced the roof and they've eliminated the pan vents on the roof, and then they put in a ridge vent, but they didn't cut in the ridge vent. I don't know what it is, but I see that all the time. You look it up there and you're expecting to see an opening for the ridge vent, and they never cut it out. So that's one that really frustrates me. Somebody paid a lot of money to have that ridge vent put in, and come on, guys, cut it in.
Rocky, did you have something to add to that?
I guess I see a lot of issues with the GFCI, reverse polarity plugs, like Larry was talking about. Issues with decks, how ledgers are attached to houses, stuff like that. There's about 50-50. They're attached correctly. Sometimes you just see the old 1/16 penny every 12-foot game. Railing deck boards rotten joists, stuff like that. There's a lot of stuff, it seems like, with decks, and it seems like for me at least, and maybe it's just luck of the draw, but it's a lot of decks that have been painted and not stained. That kind of seems like an issue, because paint maintenance on that is I think harder to do, and it's harder to get inside the small crevices, so a little bit more prone to rot and moisture issues. So that's pretty much the main things. Oh, and caulking around the backsplash. I see a lot of caulk maintenance that needs to happen, and it's again a moisture issue. If water rolls back behind the casework and gets on the drywall over time, that could cause a mold issue. So that's something I'll call out.
Okay. Laura had asked, why is the high water pressure a problem? You referenced that. Can you speak a little bit more to that?
Sure. High water pressure is an issue. I mean, everybody thinks, oh boy, I love this high water pressure. and it is nice, but almost all of your home appliances, even sprinkler systems, are designed to work at about 60 psi. That's optimal in my book, and that's where the public utility department, they shoot for 60. Okay, they'll go as low as 40, but when you get up in the pressures above 80 psi, what happens is like the solenoid devices on your washer and dryer or your washing machine. Those things are not designed for pressures above 80 psi. And so if you look at the warranty on dishwashers and washing machines and some of those appliances like that, they won't warranty their product if the water pressures are higher than 80 psi. Another thing that can happen is, you got a little black rubber hose coming out of the wall going to your washing machine, okay? And if you got high water pressure and you haven't got a braided hose back there, you're just asking for trouble. So the other thing, if your sprinkler system was designed, and at one time you had 60 psi water pressure, and they put in your sprinkler system, all those sprinkler heads are designed for a lower water pressure. When you get your water pressure up to 100, and I see a lot of 100 psi, when you start watering your lawn at 100 psi, you're not getting drops of water anymore. You're getting a fine mist that just up in the air. So there's quite a few reasons why high water pressure is an issue. It used to be, about a $300-400 repair, because you had to have a plumber come in, put a pressure reducing valve in. Nowadays, if you know how to cut a copper pipe, and you can go to Ace Hardware, you can actually buy a kit with SharkBite fittings and the whole shebang for about $80 and put it in yourself. It takes some mechanical ability, but it's a small price to pay to save a lot of water and to save your appliances.
Okay. All right, any other questions that any of you may have? Please drop them in. What can you suggest to the seller? What can the realtor suggest to their sellers in order to make things as easy as possible, as smooth as possible on the home inspection end? Is there things they can help prepare their clients with?
And we touched on it earlier with having the house ready. Access is available. It is nice, like this morning, the seller left a note and mentioned the hail damage and that it was being repaired and the gutters were replaced last week and the access is located here. That's not expected. We're going to find it because we go through the whole place, but anything, or in some cases, a higher end technology on a heat system or something that's just not real common, if they have a manual for it or if it's available, stuff like that is always kind of nice to have. But really, the house being ready to be inspected is probably the biggest thing I would say is having them ready to do that.
Anything else, Larry or Rocky? Any words of wisdom, words of advice you would give to the realtors?
Well, you might want to let your buyers know that those home inspectors, man, they're just paid troublemakers. Okay. So we, let them know that what we want to concentrate on at the home inspection is those big ticket items. Okay. Those things that might be outside of your budget. But there's always going to be little things that a house, little items that need repair. And let's not worry about those because you're always going to have a honey-do list. But I don't know. I usually try to explain that to buyers when we're doing the walkthrough. But the buyers get emotional, and it's a big purchase. And not every house is perfect. Geez, we inspect brand new houses all the time. And you find things, you know, dishwashers that aren't hooked up, cracks in the beautiful shower tile and things like that. So, you know, every house has something. So just gotta get them ready for the inspection.
Rocky, anything on your end?
Everybody pretty much touched on it. It's access, things like that. I like to let clients know that there's kind of two categories defects fall into, and I kind of let them know that there's like a honey-do list, and then there's actual things that probably professionals should get into. So there's big ticket items like Larry was saying, and then there's just general house maintenance that every house has. And I could take this group on a tour of my own house right now, and there's little projects that need done everywhere. So like Larry was saying, buyers get emotional. And just because the report is 56 pages long, that doesn't mean that we should burn the house down and start over. It's just kind of the way it goes.
So can I ask a question? So in the buy sell or in the inspection notice, it always says that you should only get the part of the inspection that pertains to any kind of adverse material fact or any kind of something that the homeowner needs to deal with. I've had a lot of people call me and say, well, they send us over the full home inspection. And really, it's paid for by the buyer. And is there a issue for home inspectors about it being not right to give the whole home inspection when you get that home inspection notice during negotiations? I mean,
It can become an issue. I've seen in situations where the seller receives the entire report, and the deal falls apart. And so the next buyer comes along and the seller says, well, we've got a home inspection report here if you want it. That can be an issue because that report, number one, the report was a snapshot of the property on that day. Okay. So keep that in mind. And that report belongs to the previous buyer. And even in my report, it says this is not to be relied upon by anybody but that buyer who paid for the report. So sometimes when you get giving away property inspection reports that don't belong to you, that can be an issue.
Yep. So the buyer that paid for it, it's their intellectual property to do with what they want. I think as real estate agents representing the buyer, if you're sending the whole report to sellers, you're opening a huge can of worms that really shouldn't. It's just like, you guys know, if you send the whole report to your underwriter, you're going to get a lot of stuff back that they're going to want taken care of. And so I think that kind of, I don't see it as they should, like, you shouldn't be sending the whole report, but it is the buyers, it's their property, it's theirs to do. Like, they could sell it. And on top of, following what Larry said there, it's exactly right. It was that day, the condition of the home at the time we were in it. And the liability then is only to that person that bought it. And so if they sell it and that buyer of the new report or of the old report calls me and says, well, you have this in the report, usually it's going to be, I can discuss this with you. This is not, it's my world is with the person that paid me to do that. And that's where that's who I'm, who I provided the service for. And so it's kind of tough when that's where the situation they get into is they don't have, it's not all their stuff. It's someone else's. And it was at a different time. It was a month ago. It was 2 months ago or 6 months ago.
Yeah. You know, another thing is, and I'm not an expert on seller's disclosure statements or anything like that, but I think it's almost a disservice to send that report to the seller. Because if the deal doesn't fall through, are you going to put everything that was on that report on your disclosure statement? And maybe I don't know. That's probably a better question for a realtor, but I just can't see any reason for sending the report to the seller. Just copy and paste those things, those issues that the buyer brings up, and send them.
Agreed. I would only send over portions of the report, or I mean, I wouldn't tell the client what to do with the report. Obviously, they own the whole thing. But sending over, like it's been touched on, sending over the entire thing may cause more problems than it solves. I think that's with the agent and the potential buyer to decide what they want to send over to the seller and go from there on that. But yeah, sending over a huge report to a person could cause some issues.
Yeah. You know, another thing about disclosure is some people will, and realtors are really good about this now. You know, it wasn't this way 10 years ago, but making sure that the sellers aren't there for the inspection, because there's nothing worse than a seller following you around with a screwdriver. I mean, geez, give me a break. Because that, you know, I've told sellers before, you know, you really don't want to follow me around because everything I take a picture of is going to be in the report, and you really want to know everything that's going to be in this report. So, but you know, more and more we're seeing situations where the sellers are there, but they're, you know, maybe incapacitated, or, you know, they can't get out of the house, and that's fine because those guys aren't following you around. But we still like to have those people, you know, hide out in your bedroom or leave when the buyers show up.
And just a comment Rose had made to everyone too, the inspection notice does specify that only the relevant portion of the inspection report is to be attached. So you guys all kind of touched on that. So
unfortunately, you see it all the time where they send the whole thing, the entire thing. And then I get a call on it and I'm like, read the sign, the thing that you're signing.
It seems lazy. I don't know if I hurt anybody's feelings there. I apologize, but.
All right, we have just a couple minutes left. I don't know if we have any additional questions that anybody's been has thought of throughout the course of our time or wanted to ask that didn't get addressed. Are there any questions that anybody has specifically for any of our home inspectors?
Yeah, one question, if I could, and I'm sorry you might have already addressed this because I got in here late. I thought it started at 1 o'clock. The Pacific, Pacific Electrical panel. I've got a buyer who, or excuse me, a seller's just at wit's end because we said an inspector said the panel needed to be replaced. And there are electricians that say you don't need to replace the panel. We can get the parts and we can service it. But what is that issue? People are really just getting bent out of shape over the Pacific Electrical panel.
So yeah, Danny, you're right. Well, the way I write my report is I spell out the issues or concerns of a Federal Pacific Electric Service panel. Okay, I've inspected thousands of them. I mean, thousands of them, and I take the cover off every one of them. And the issue is with Federal Pacific Electric Service panel is the breakers don't trip when they're supposed to. Well, if a breaker doesn't trip when it's supposed to, you're probably going to get a scorching mark on the wire that right at the breaker. I could count on one hand the scorch marks I've seen underneath of the Federal Pacific Electric panel. I've had some loose breakers in the panel. Okay, that happens. So in my report, it spells out what's wrong with the Federal Pacific report or panel, why it's wrong, and it has a link to some more information on the internet about it. But also it says that it should be evaluated by a licensed and qualified electrician to determine the safety. And if the electrician wants to sign off on it, perfect, fine with me, because it's out of my hands.
And that's really, you know, if you talk to, depends on the electrician you talk to, when they get to, some of them will just tell you they're garbage. And then there's some of the, and whether they are or not in that situation in the home, have them check them out. And I've had a lot of them where they checked them out and they tightened the breakers and tightened the lugs on them. And, you know, when they're clean and they've been there for 45 years and there's no hot spots, no nothing going on, it comes into a liability for us. We cannot walk through a house with a Federal Pacific panel and not put it in that report. I do believe that it should be an electrician that says, yes, that needs replaced, or you're just fine. I don't see, it's outside of my scope to tell you that needs replaced. If there's scorch marks, still may not need replaced. Maybe that breaker needs replaced. And so we put that on the professional, on the qualified electrician that knows what they're doing. And if you go to the internet about Federal Pacific, we're all going to die. It's going to burn down. It's like going to WebMD for a cough. You know, that's one of those things. And there was a lot of stuff with Federal Pacific, you know, historically, like there was a class action lawsuit that actually got dropped. They say 1 in 4 of them start fires. And I'm with Larry. I've seen hundreds in the last 2 years, and I've had one that had a scorch mark on a wire on it out of them that really seemed concerning. So.
Just Laura had a comment. I had a home inspector actually tell a buyer that he needed to have the Federal Pacific panel replaced or it would get hot and burn the house down. So.
Yeah. Go ahead, Larry.
Probably read too much on the internet. Yeah, that's, you know, they don't scare me at all. But there's so much information out there, and you just got to bring it to the attention of the seller. And so that's why we have an electrician. We refer to an electrician because they're really the experts. You know, and
I guess what I'm asking is if we can find a friendly way to put that in the inspection report that we recommend, because it is a Federal Pacific product, that we recommend an electrician inspect, a licensed electrician inspect the property, and not get the blood pressure up for everybody, because everybody's just having a little fit right now.
I agree, Danny. Like I say, that's why I provide the information that they can easily access by clicking to more information online. But it also says that a licensed and qualified electrician should evaluate it and sign off on it. Give it the blessing.
Yeah, the verbiage when calling out a defect, especially something like one of these panels, which, to be honest with you, I have one in my home. And I actually had an electrician come check it out just to be sure, because I couldn't see anything wrong with it. But, you know, like you say, you read the internet and any second this house is going to explode. And another thing too is I guess depending on the size of the panel, you're not talking about a $17,000 replacement bill for a new panel. I think he quoted me, and I'm not quoting, this is what everyone should say to everybody, but I think it was like $1,100 to put a new panel in. So somewhere in that ballpark. But yeah, I think the verbiage when calling any kind of defect out, you don't want to oversell or undersell anything. You just want to make sure you're saying the facts, and definitely if I come across that or haven't in real life, but a Zensco panel or something like that, that you just recommend that it get inspected and gone through by a licensed electrician. And like the other guys were saying, we have to say that if we come across a panel like that, just because of the known dangers in the past.
All right, well, we are coming up on 1 o'clock. Our hour is up. Are there any just closing thoughts from our panelists? Anything else you guys want to share, disclose, just put out there? If not, I would just ask maybe if you all could just share your contact information, if you want to just, so people can write that down. Again, we'll include that in the information we put out today. And again, this was recorded, so you can come back and access this and view it later if you need to. But if you guys would all share your contact information quickly so people can jot that down, that would be great.
All right. My name's Rocky Lamantia with Bedrock Inspection Services, and my contact info is phone number 406-927-9018, and you can find me on Facebook under Bedrock Inspection Services.
Thank you, Rocky. Larry?
Yeah, it's Larry Daniels, ASAP Property Inspections. My email address is asapinspections@yahoo.com. And my website is asapinspectionsmontana.com.
Okay.
I typed mine.
I saw that.
Grant Humphrey, billings.winnie.com, phone number 406-694-8909. Address is bhumphrey@wini.com. I say wini because WINI.com. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate being able to do this and being part of it. Good to see you, Rocky and Larry.
Yes, thank you all. Thank you, Larry and Rocky and Brant, for participating today. Thank you for all that joined us. And we hopefully can either be in person soon, or we will have another virtual Hot Topics, hopefully in June. So keep an eye out for that. Again, thank you guys for participating. Go out and sell some homes and do some home inspections.
Thank you very much.
All right, thanks.
Thanks.
Guys.
Thanks.
Everybody.